Ask Me Anything. So we've got different, sometimes different co-hosts, different guests each month. And tonight our topic is going to be on psychedelics, business, and leadership as far as the AMA. So this is set up as, I call this formally informal. So three guys who are just going to be sharing their experience. And, we've got a guest here who's got more experience and some of our wisdom. And, but what's really important is this is open up to all of you. So questions, and we've got some questions that have come in already, but any comments that, from what we're saying, you can add comments into LinkedIn or YouTube. We have someone who's monitoring those. And so, feel free to reach out, ask questions. We're here for you. That's the biggest thing, is here to just answer these questions and support for the community. And so we're going to start into introductions. As you can see, we're all labeled here, but I'm Steve Elfrink. I'm a Webdelics subject matter expert. Also a 40-year veteran of these expanded states, working in personal exploration and working with others. I currently have my own practice, solo practice, Om Terra, where I work primarily in a psychedelic somatic fashion. So primarily ketamine, also work with psilocybin as a facilitator in the state of Oregon. And just really happy to be here. I mean, for me, it's all about spreading information, knowledge, wisdom, answering questions. There's a lot of questions out there. And then speaking of questions, before I introduce our co-host and esteemed guest, up in the right-hand corner is a beautiful QR code, which takes you to the Webdelics website. And also you see scrolling below us here is an ability or a way to subscribe to the Webdelics newsletter, which is also available if you go to our website. So who else is with us here tonight? Well, I'm going to introduce Mike, who is our co-host and the guy in the middle here. So Mike is an attorney, entrepreneur, a former Bloomberg TV host, an avid proponent of psychedelics for healing and human optimization. And he's general counsel for Momentous Family Office and the conscious leaders of Omya.life. He's also an early investor in Nobody Studios and assists Webdelics with business development. And we're grateful for Mike to be here tonight. And then we also have on the right, Sabba Nazhand, who's our esteemed guest, great gift to humanity, a wonderful guy. Honored to know this guy and to be here with him tonight. He's got lots to share, a lot of experience, just one of the wise guys out there, in the good way of a wise guy. But I'll stop and I'll actually read his bio here. Sabba is a seasoned tech executive, founder, and advisor with 20 plus years of experience in sales and leadership. He is the founder and CEO of Safar, an integration operating system that keeps practitioners connected with clients between sessions, turning insight into sustained change and measurable outcomes. He's led teams across 3 continents, working with some of the most impactful companies on the planet, and is, it's funny, my cut and paste, there it is. And his cut and paste wasn't quite there, and is passionate about integrating technology with human connection. I love that, human connection. Thanks. So I think for all of us, the core here, human connection, and why we're here with you tonight, everyone out there, is about human connection. So we've had some questions that have already come in, so we're just going to dive right in. And again, please reach out through comments on LinkedIn and on YouTube. And feedback's appreciated, questions are appreciated, but we're going to go to our first question. Okay, so this one's for the way this is going to work, quick framework. We're going to pose the question to Sabba, and then Mike and I may add some commentary, some extra ideas to it. But really kind of just the way we frame this is 3 guys talking about talking about psychedelics. So our first question from someone out there, what's one nervous system skill you wish every founder and leader practice daily? What do you think, Sabba?
I have a lot of thoughts around this. First of all, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure and honor, and great to be with you, Steve and Mike, 2 legends. Like, getting to know you and your backgrounds is pretty epic. So I'm glad to be here. Yeah, like I said, a lot of thoughts here. The one that comes to mind is a skill called interoception. Basically, it's noticing what's happening in your body before it runs your behavior. So here's what I mean. Most founders operate, and I say this from my own experience as an exec and founder, is that we operate in a constant low-grade stress state. So it's always fight or flight. It's always on. And we mistake that for being driven, for caring, for hustle. And so I did that for 20 years. And I thought the tension in my chest was just what ambition felt like. And it wasn't that. It was my nervous system stuck in threat mode. So the practice is really simple. Before a hard conversation or a big decision, we take 10 seconds, take a breath, take a couple of breaths. We ask ourselves, what am I actually feeling right now? Is my chest tight? Am I holding my breath? Is my jaw clenched? And that's really it. And you're not trying to fix anything. You're just noticing how your body feels. And in that noticing, it creates a gap between the heightened stimulus or the stimulus and your response. So instead of reacting quickly, you can actually choose how to respond. And I'll say this last thing, like Navy SEALs do this. They use box breathing. So if you're not familiar with that, it's breathe in 4 counts, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. And so it's a very similar concept there. And so I would say that's probably the one that comes to mind for me is recovering from a cold, interoception.
Awesome. Beautiful. The one thing I'd add to that, and I really appreciate what you're saying there, Sabba, as far as just body awareness. And I think in general, that's something that can come more into the psychedelic space. Or, I'm a big fan of psychedelic, working with low dose ketamine, low dose substances, and more of a somatic approach. And I think looking at something around like psychobiological capacity, just understanding what someone's holding, and maybe working with some lower dose stuff before taking someone into a bigger experience that can overwhelm this system. So, but I think, bringing more awareness to the body in this psychedelic space and ecosphere, I think is huge, especially leaders, everyone.
So important and such an underutilized tool that we have as human beings, right? We're so fascinated with everything that's outside, the external stimulus, the universe, but most people have never focused on the innerverse, what's going on. So I think Sabba hit the nail on the head that, the ability to do that, so much of that you learn with and through the use of psychedelics and other, meditation and other things, but using these things in combination, extremely powerful.
Yes.
Oh, well said. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yes. Okay, our next question, please. While we're waiting for that, remember, scan that QR code, go to Webdelics, sign up for our newsletter. So next question, what's the biggest risk of chasing peak experiences, especially for high performers? Great question.
That's such a great question. And as someone who has chased peak experiences many times, I will say, just to back up, for folks that maybe have little or no experience sitting with psychedelics or plant medicines, is, you get into this state, which for the most part is really beautiful and profound. And those peak experiences come in waves of euphoria, love, connectedness to the universe, to God, or whatever you may want to call it. And that feeling of like, yeah, everything's going to be okay. And I'm fine and so forth. And so when you come back from that and, you come back to reality, I was talking, Mike and Steve were talking about this earlier. Like one of my experiences was so profound that it was a Saturday afternoon. It was amazing. And then Monday I had to get on a Zoom call and look at spreadsheets. I'm like, wait, what is this? Doesn't even make sense. And so I want to go back to where I was on Saturday. So the risk of that is, especially with high performers, because you're always on, we're always trying to work at the highest level, is it's becoming a new way of actually like avoiding your life, avoiding the shit in your life that you need to deal with, avoiding work, life, family, and so forth. So I've seen this a lot with high achievers. We're good at optimizing. So we start optimizing our spiritual journey. And so it's like, okay, you know what? I'm doing great. And I had this beautiful ceremony or this experience. And then 4 months go down, 4 months pass. I don't integrate, and which, by the way, I want to touch on that. And I don't integrate this experience. And so now I'm in a bad place. So what does that mean? It's time to optimize more ceremony or bigger dose or maybe an exotic location and so forth. So that for me, it feels something that especially high performers or high achievers need to look for, or anyone in general needs to kind of watch out there. And it's interesting because it feels like growth, because you're having this intense experience, you have these like insights and these downloads, but then you're not able to actually integrate it and move that into the regular day-to-day of your life. So I can keep going. This is such a big question, but I think that probably is a good stopping point.
Mike, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's a great answer. And I think that by doing that, you're essentially undermining the entire point of doing psychedelics, right? Which is to surrender, to see what is, to become part of the state of flow, to find out what needs to happen and allow that to happen. When we're constantly chasing, we're constantly trying to achieve, constantly trying to get to the top of the next mountain, we're missing everything else along the way. And so, yes, big experiences do happen. Yes, they're profound. Yeah, change, amazing. And sometimes they're not. But I am a firm believer that the medicines give us what we need. And if we're willing to accept that, then I think we're doing it right. And we're not running the risk of everything else that we're talking about here if you're constantly chasing the next big thing.
Yeah, my only 2 cents is for me, will tell a lot of my clients this, the fastest way is actually to slow down and integrate and listen, slow down and listen. And the other thing I've also seen with especially high performers, people that are just kind of going for it, not integrating, but then instead of ego dissolution, we start to get ego inflation. And there's this place of just grandiosity. And so I would just encourage anyone, especially in these leadership roles, slow down, integrate, feel.
Agreed.
And Steve, you remind me of one of my favorite sayings that the Navy SEALs use, which is slow is smooth, smooth is fast, right? So, yeah.
And actually, I want to touch on something really quickly. One, you reminded me of, there's this like saying that people say is like when they have these experiences and it's all beautiful and like profound, they're like, oh, everyone should do it, or all politicians should do it. Like, no. Like the ego dissolution or the growth of ego when you're not in the right headspace or prepared or doing the right things can actually be, counterintuitive. So I want to re-emphasize what you said, Steve. And then for folks that, we use the word integration a lot, and it's big in like psychedelic healing and psychedelic therapy and modalities. But I want to just say like quickly, like what integration essentially means is when you have a peak experience and you have this profound insights and downloads, what the simplest term is, this experience allows you to move it into everyday life. So for example, you get an insight, maybe you understand why you keep repeating a pattern or what's really driving your anxiety. That's great, but that insight fades. So you want to get back to your regular life. And what you do is integration is changing how those behaviors, taking those insights and making small incremental changes or lifestyle changes that embody that experience that you had. So I just wanted to highlight that. So when we use integration, it's like, it's really important, especially in this space, to take it seriously.
Yes, I think there's so much focus on the session, the medicine, but the magic, the true grounding, the true transformation is in that integration, which it's a lifetime. But also people need to understand.
Correct.
I think there's a question here. Where should people start if they want to get into the sector, if they don't have any previous experiences with plant medicines or psychedelics?
Oh, that's a really good question. Mike, did you want to say something? I saw.
No. You answer, and I'd love to add on. Yeah.
I mean, I can say from my personal experience, right? So, as Steve mentioned in the intro, I've been in tech and startups for my whole career, 20 years plus, and I knew very little about psychedelics as a modality or as a medicine, and also from recreationally. Admittedly, like in college and early teens, I spent a lot of time with them. But from a therapeutic and scientific perspective, I didn't know much, and from a industry perspective, I knew nothing. So what I did was kind of take the skills that I had in tech and in sales, was how do I get in front of people as fast as possible? So I did my reading, I researched, I listened to podcasts, and then I started hearing these common themes and names and organizations. And then so that led me down a rabbit hole of just like looking up on the website, looking up like some of the big players in the space. And then I found a conference about 5 years ago and saw the list of attendees at the conference, sent cold emails to them and was like, hey, I'm just introducing myself, no agenda, would love to stop and, get you a coffee if we get a chance. And so I just embedded myself and just started, meeting people, talking to people. That for me was what worked the best, is just be curious and learn about the space and just figure out like how you could fit in. The last thing I'll say is how I was able to fit in. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a researcher. I'm not an incredible practitioner like Steve is, or lawyer that can come in and build contracts for a business, right? Or create contracts. But what I was really good at was advising founders in their go-to-market, building pitch decks, organizing their operations. So I was like, hey, I'm not in this space, but this is what I bring to the table. I think there's a mutual thing that we can work on here. And so like I would learn from them around integration, the medicines, how they work, neuroscience and all of that. And then I would provide them my playbooks and frameworks. So that's the last thing I'll say is like, that's how I did it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is, right? Where do you start? You start at the beginning. And for me, my journey was, I didn't have my first psychedelic journey until I was in my mid-40s. I was petrified of what my idea of psychedelics was. And so I wanted to do as much research as I could. And, it was up until that point in my life, I had been, everything that I believed about psychedelics had been framed by that commercial that a lot of us had seen when we were children with the egg over the frying pan. This is your brain. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions? And that scared the hell out of me. And so before I did anything, I started reading and researching. And here I am, the founder of a law firm, and we have a TV show on Bloomberg TV. We're doing other things. And I wanted to start talking about psychedelics. It was very different. And I knew that if I was going to do that, I needed to come at this with reverence and confidence and understanding. And so there's so much, like with what Webdelics is doing, there's so much great information out there. Then find the people that you know, love, and trust. You'd be surprised how many people know something or know someone. And just start, like Sabba said, start immersing yourself into those groups, into those organizations, finding the people you know, love, and trust, and let them help guide you.
And then my proverbial 2 cents, a lot of cities, bigger cities, have psychedelic societies. So there's a whole world, literally, it's worldwide, of psychedelic societies. A lot of them have monthly meetings. And there's, and just Google whatever city you're in, psychedelic society, and there's likely a psychedelic society. Because they're in LA, Portland, Minneapolis, Omaha. Pretty much every major city has a psychedelic society. And there is, I can't not remember that there's one website that has all the psychedelic societies on there.
I think it's called Global Psychedelic Society, GPS. So
that's it.
Yeah.
Yes. With yes. Yeah. What's his name that I can't remember? And then so psychedelic societies also look on Meetup is a great place to find folks. This Meetup's just a website of people getting together talking about different things. Sometimes it's psychedelics. And then the other thing I would just add in for anyone new to this, start low. There's a lot of like emphasis on heroic doses and big doses and go big or go home. But, start low, start slow, start lower doses of psilocybin, start, exploring ketamine's a good place to start with. And the other thing is just bring in a little skepticism. Don't trust the first person who says X, Y, or Z. So a little, internal wisdom. Just know your source all the way around. And with all this, like we're all saying, knowledge is power, do your research. And listen to your heart, what feels right for you. Not this guy, not that shaman, but what feels right for you and where you're at. And be safe.
Love that.
Okay, so we have a question from Mark. Can you speak to how microdosing impacts creativity, focus, clarity? How does it play a role in the entrepreneur journey? I always mess up that word. So microdosing. Great question.
Steve, can we start with maybe Sabba or you, just for anyone in the audience who's not exactly sure what microdosing means with that, and then jump into an answer?
Absolutely. So microdosing essentially means, so it says micro, like really small, and dosing. So a small dose is essentially a small dose of a certain medicine, a psychedelic. Generally, it's psilocybin, but LSD and other modalities also fall into like being able to microdose. And it's sub-perceptual, meaning that the dose should be low enough where you're not, tripping or high or hallucinating or anything like that. But it's enough for the mechanisms to connect to the certain aspects of your brain to create change. And so when you hear microdosing, you hear that a lot. And it's one of the fastest ways, or I shouldn't say fastest, but one of the ways that mainstream has really started to learn more about psychedelics. And also a really good way Steve mentioned, like start, slow and low. And this is one way, is like microdosing, and then before you get into bigger doses. And I'm sure there's others can chime in on that, on microdosing part.
What do you think as far as leadership, and how can a business or lady?
So from my perspective and what I've learned, the evidence is mixed, right? Like there have been controlled studies around microdosing, and a lot of resources, a lot of great organizations that are doing it. And some of the effects some of the folks in these studies have experienced cognitive performance claims. And so I don't think there's enough research out there to say that this is like the tried and true way to grow, but there is a way that anecdotally it works. Like my own experience, I've microdosed psilocybin, and it's been really powerful. It was really powerful for me in my day-to-day and how I approach business, how I approach meetings, big deadlines and so forth. It gave me this like being able to react differently. It's almost similar to what I mentioned around the nervous system, like just being a little more introspective and being able to react to things from a place of calm groundedness and so forth. And so there's enough out there that says it works. And I think just recently they started doing research on microdosing ibogaine, which is massive. And ibogaine is a psychoactive plant that is generally you see folks that are veterans and folks that have PTSD that have been using and getting amazing results. So I think there's some interest there around performance and microdosing.
Mike, 2 cents from you?
Yeah, just speaking from experience, I have microdosed iboga, which is the plant from which ibogaine is created, and psilocybin and others. And to go to the question, absolutely have acknowledged more focus and creativity, more of the good, less of the bad. So even, a lot of people use coffee. Coffee is good, I guess, but it's also very distracting. It creates anxiety, it creates nervousness. There's this very, like Sabba said, this very calm focus, kind of a laser focus that I have when I'm microdosing. Creativity is absolutely enhanced. It just kind of puts you in a nice flow state, even though, like you said, in many ways it's subperceptible in the sense that there's no psychoactive effect. There's something going on. The neurogenesis is happening, and there's a way of, I think, tapping into that with microdosing in a way that does help entrepreneurs and others. And I think it's clear that a lot of people recognize this when you talk to people who are doing it, people functioning at a high level. The consensus seems to be that it is beneficial in their opinion.
Yes, I would third all that. That's something that's benefited me. For me, it's this kind of just what I call it is like reducing the noise that I didn't even know was there.
Yeah.
So there's just like more clarity, more focus, less background noise, and just more, I'm just here. So just more presence. And then one other quick thing.
I was going to say there's this really great study out there. I don't know if you guys have seen it, and the listeners can go find it, but where they've given spiders, low dose psilocybin and they've given them caffeine. And you can see the way the webs are weaved. Very, very different in their symmetry, in their beauty, in everything. I think that speaks volumes as to what's going on.
Love that.
And then focusing on leadership and business development, I think, and then the studies that this was right before LSD back in the 60s got illegalized. And James Fadiman, who was the guy who kind of birthed the whole microdosing world, was working on these studies with architects, business leaders, scientists who had a problem they couldn't solve. And then they're working with not quite microdosing, but there's also value in, that's why bigger is not always better. Like I'm a huge fan of lower dosing of substances. So they're working with like somewhere around like 50 micrograms of LSD, which is kind of a smaller, some people call it a museum dose. So you can be somewhat functional and out in the world, but just this heightened clarity and heightened creativity. But they found pretty much across the board, all these guys who had these problems within their business world, architectural world, scientific world, that couldn't be solved, but by working with these lower doses of LSD back then, was profound for them.
Yeah.
So I think there is a place, there's a beautiful place in the business world for psychedelics, and it doesn't have to be, go to Peru and do 10 ayahuasca ceremonies. It can be some of this lower dose work. And then there is value in the bigger experiences, but there's also value in low dosing.
Yeah. Steve, I wanted to jump in really quickly. I think you bring up, I love that you brought this up, right? There's two things that come to mind. Is one, Center for Minds, Dr. Bruce Dahmer. He essentially took over Fadiman's research around this LSD studies for performance. And we were I have a few friends that are part of the organization, and you're seeing this resurgence of creating like leadership frameworks, coaching frameworks with LSD, which is so amazing. And I would love to be a part of that one day. And so, yes, I love that. And I think sorry. Yeah. And so, which is really fascinating. And I think there is a place for in organizations and leadership roles to have this. And on the other note, I have been part of like masterminds, like founder leadership circles, and even some previous organizations where we would do offsites and we would spend a day and a half and we would microdose. And then we would go, and it would be, start off with just like relaxing, meditating, breath work. And then we would go into a boardroom, whiteboard session, and we would start going over business strategies, but we would do it in that state of microdosing or low dose psychedelics. And it was powerful because it in so many ways, and it connects you to your creativity, opens up there's different levels of exploration. And yeah, so I mean, again, I can talk about this topic all day long as well. It's really powerful.
Yes, there is a place, and there is improvement for any company that can happen, but follow your state and federal laws, and none of this is condoning any of this. And then,
are you saying this is not medical and this is not legal advice? Is that the disclaimer?
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Three guys talking. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Okay, we had a next question, please. Okay. Which substances do you think are most effective for entrepreneurs, and do you think that different substances are better for different industries?
Oh,
we kind of touched a little bit on that, but let's go into that.
I mean, I want to reframe that question for a second, actually, but I will answer it. My reframe and thought, that first thing popped up. It's not about which substance is best for entrepreneurs. It's about which one matches the problem you're trying to solve, or what your intentions are, right? And just as a quick side note, like generally when you're sitting with these psychedelics and these medicines, especially in ceremony or higher doses, there's always this preparation and diet, meditation, journaling, and intention setting. Like, what are my intentions before I go into sitting with these medicines? So I think that could be a potential reframe, but I will go down like a quick list of what I think is powerful. I wouldn't say there's one substance, right? The ones that come to mind for me: psilocybin, magic mushrooms. It's good for seeing patterns, right? Your blind spots, limiting beliefs, emotional blocks. And research shows that it doesn't make you more creative in that moment, but people generate ideas. I have anecdotal evidence that it's happened for me. And so it's there's psilocybin, there's LSD, acid. It's more analytical from what I've for what I've experienced and what I've also talked to others, it's good for systems thinking, seeing connections between things, complex problem solving. Some you can call it a pattern break, which is I think is really cool. And then from a creativity standpoint, like when you're in that state with LSD, especially when you have these intentions of, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, you start connecting dots of like how things work from a design perspective, from a data-driven perspective. Again, I'm using my personal experiences here. Those two are ones that I stand out to me the most. But I mean, you can argue almost every psychedelic will have a use case for an entrepreneur.
Yes, I would agree. I think the two classics are LSD and psilocybin, and I think the beauty of those two medicines are, taking people out of their cognitive Kansas. I love that phrase, borrowing that from Terence McKenna.
Love that.
But just a shift out, because we get in this, boxed thinking and boxed reality, and the ability of these substances to just kind of take us outside of that box and think of something that can show up that you never even would have thought about, but just a widened perspective of what's possible. So looks like Mike might be having some challenges. Good luck out there, Mike. Oh,
I'm here.
Hey. So let's go to.
All right, I'm back. Sorry, guys.
I'm not sure if you heard that question. It was kind of a continuation of.
I did.
Anything you want to add to that?
I think Sabba did a great job, and that's exactly what it is, depending on where you are. And think about who entrepreneurs are as business people. What are they doing? What problems are they trying to solve? They're creative, they're industrious, they're ongoing. There's a lot going on. You're trying to raise money. So there are different stages where different things are happening. And I think, depending on where you are in the life cycle of things and what you're going through, there are different substances and molecules that can help.
Boom. Well stated. Okay, so could you gentlemen recommend one or two great books to introduce someone to microdosing?
Microdosing. I know Dr. Fadiman has a book on microdosing. I don't remember the name of it. I can probably look it up really quickly. That's the first one that comes to mind for microdosing.
He's the OG
the Psychedelic Explorer's Handbook, I think.
Oh, is that what it is? Yeah.
I think so.
I'm not sure if that one was specific to microdosing. I think it mentions it in there.
Mentions it, yeah, but doesn't go in depth. And we have some information, Steve, that I saw, I think, for introduction to psilocybin. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, and on the Webdelics website, there's definitely information on microdosing on there.
Yeah, there's some good information on there.
So there's one called Microdosing for Health, Healing, and Enhanced Performance by Dr. Fadiman.
There we go.
Yeah, that's the main one. That's his the main book on microdosing and performance.
Yeah, and again, allegedly, got the idea of microdosing from Albert Hoffman, but James Fadiman is the one who really is kind of spread that to the world, and a great guy.
Seems like he is.
Yes. Let's see. Sabba, can you please provide the list of substances you mentioned? I wish to know more about it.
The list of substances of just now, the two that I mentioned was psilocybin or magic mushrooms, and then LSD were the two ones that I mentioned around entrepreneurs essentially using that, and also from a coaching perspective or mastermind, doing offsites with your team. Those are the two that are probably the most common and the ones that you get a lot of impact. Now that I just thought about this, if you want to go down a deep rabbit hole, one that I don't want to say it's a fairly new substance, but it's not as common as 3-MMC, and that one you're starting to see a lot of that pop up from an organizational perspective that executives and leaders are using for brainstorming and whiteboarding sessions.
But one thing I want to add to all this, for right now with the current legal status in the U.S., most of these substances are illegal, but Colorado and Oregon have legal access to psilocybin. There's specific states cities like Oakland, California. These substances have been decriminalized. I believe Detroit. I mean, there's this number of cities where it's been decriminalized. So there can be, if people are apprehensive about, trying to find it on the street, there are legal access routes within the U.S. to get these medicines.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. What are common mistakes people don't realize they're making?
In life, or because that's a whole AMA right there.
Let's frame it around psychedelic.
Yeah, of course. I'm just teasing. I would say we touched on some of this stuff, like thinking the experience itself is the work.
Yeah.
Right. You have this profound experience, and perfect example. The first time that I sat with a substance that was from a therapeutic or really high dose perspective, I remember coming back and thinking to myself, oh yeah, like I have all the answers, I'm connected, love, everything is great. And, all the trauma that I've had in my life, all of the ups and downs, like, yeah, it's great. I feel good. And it was not, obviously that was not the case. So I would say that. To add to that, another common mistake is like returning from an experience, returning to a dysregulated environment immediately. And that is so critical. And I realize that it's easier said than done when when you're working or you're a parent and you have responsibilities. You can't go to the jungles of Costa Rica and be there for 3 weeks after an experience and take the time to unwind and get grounded and all of that. But it's important to take a day or two at least to not go back into your phone or responsibilities and just sit there and process what you went through. Last one, I mean, there's so many. I'll say the other one is not having a container for the emotions that surface up in the coming weeks. Again, integration, what I talked about, like being in a place where you can communicate this with a trusted person or people, community, write it down, think through, process. And then, of course, chasing the next experience, I would say is a huge common mistake. But there's many, but I think those are probably good ones.
Yeah, those are good ones. And I'm always the one saying, go low, go slow. Mistake of taking too much too soon if you're not ready for it.
Yeah.
So
it goes back to integration, right? Like,
yeah,
you're not integrating. Yeah.
But again, I just want to say, like, listen to your, I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. Listen to yourself. What feels right for you?
Mike didn't like that I interrupted you, Steve, so he jumped off. He's like, I'm done.
I'm out of here. And speaking out of here, I know we're scheduled for a half hour, but looks like questions are still coming in, so we'll keep going.
Okay.
So if you had to design a first-time safe, where'd that one go? Oh, there it is. If you had to design a first-time safe container checklist, setting, support, and aftercare, what are the non-negotiables?
Oh man. I mean, Steve, this is your world, but I'll chime in from what I, from my experience, and of course from building my company, how important integration is and so forth. But the one aspect is that you hear a lot is set and setting. So set is your mindset. So your mindset going into a ceremony or a journey, you need those clear intentions. You need to be prepared. The diet is important. Meditation, being in a low frequency space mentally, all these things before you go into ceremony, right? Some, like for example, when you sit with ayahuasca, you go through a dieta, and that's cleansing your body of toxins, of meats and other things before you go into that. And then the other is setting, and setting is the physical environment. And so it's like, you need to be in a space that you feel safe and comfortable. And especially if it's in a group setting, that you're comfortable with the people that you're around, because that's so important. You turn off you don't want to have your phone. You don't want interruptions. Like I'll give you an example. One time we were, a group of us were in a ceremony, and everything was great, set and setting, except for one aspect was the facilitator who was there for, again, safe container, which is probably the third non-negotiable, is he put on meditation music, and he accidentally put on his free YouTube, and it cut to a commercial, and the commercial was something like intense. I don't know if it was like a car thing, and people freaked out for a minute, but those are non-negotiables. You're setting, having a support system or a facilitator. And then lastly, I mean, I have to say this, is aftercare, is integration. It's the most important thing, in my opinion. More important than the actual medicine that you're working with, actual day of the journey and so forth, is the integration and how you incorporate that into your life, because none of that matters if you don't.
Mm-hmm. All beautifully said. But what I would add to that as a non-negotiable is, especially if the first session, have someone there with you would be a non-negotiable. I mean, people have profound solo experiences, but if it's your first time, have someone there with you.
Mm-hmm.
But then also someone you trust and someone that and then also another kind of obvious one, but know the source of where you're getting this.
Yes.
Know your source. And then there's so much, this could be a whole hour discussion, but one thing I want to add is also, for me, there's setting, and one thing I'm trying to introduce into the world is capacity, setting and capacity of just knowing your state. Like, are you ready for this big experience? If you're, kind of destabilized, you got to be a little more careful, find someone who's trauma informed, someone who knows what they're doing. And also maybe not a bigger, maybe a big dose is not the time. What is your capacity to receive this experience? And so that's I think a huge one is, and again, I'm going back to that place over and over here, but know thyself, know what you're ready for, know what you can handle. Can you handle this huge experience that's going to kind of blow apart your world possibly right now? So
that's
stay
awesome.
safe.
That's awesome. I will say this though, is the caveat is, even till this day, I'm still day of, I'm like, oh, do I want to do this? I shouldn't do it. I'm a little nervous. What's going to happen? Who am I going to see? What am I going to feel? So, but to your point, there is a very important aspect of understanding, your nervous system and being trauma informed and having that support. So I will say that's still important.
Anything from you, Mike?
No, I only caught the tail end of it, so I'll wait until the next one. It sounds like you guys covered that pretty well.
Looks like we've got one more question. Ooh, a big one. I love big questions. I have a question regarding suicide. We often see a lot of loneliness, among those at the top who use the substances you are discussing. How would these substances help someone who has lost everything they invested? This person now feels as if there's nothing left to work towards because the majority of their wealth has been lost. And they were giving to their wife. Due to these losses and the separation, they see no values in living anymore. I'm very new to this discussion, so I'm just trying. So regarding suicide, I'm just trying to personally absorb all this.
Yeah.
And also, Nancy, I appreciate the vulnerability, reaching out this way. Loneliness, substances. Okay. So Sabba, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I would just make sure this, if you know this person, that they are getting immediate help and they're having a support system that when you're in that state, I will be vulnerable for a moment. I've had moments in my life, especially before doing the inner work and the deep work, not just psychedelics, that I had these ideations cross my mind many times, and it's scary, and you feel like there's no other hope. And so I will say, make sure that there's a support system and get help. So I want to say that's first and foremost. I don't think, I know anecdotally, research perspective, even from me, folks that have gone through these types of massive traumas and issues in their life, psychedelics have helped them. But at the end of the day, these are just tools. And Steve mentioned this earlier, that you have to be in the right state of mind. You have to have, the right medical background. There are so many things that can go wrong, especially with someone who is in that state of mind and has this illness and condition. It's not for everyone. Psychedelics is not for everyone, especially if there's what I just mentioned, or if there's any certain medications that they're on. Psychosis is real. Things can get ugly really fast and they can get worse. And so I want to caveat that by saying, like, be careful and do the due diligence, medical review, intake, all of that stuff, and know the substances. And then the other component is, again, from my own experience and what I've seen in my space and people I've talked to, it has helped. It has helped people heal and get better and get back on their feet and provide that needed love and support they needed for themselves. The last thing you feel is love when you're in that state for yourself. And so these medicines can help reconnect yourself to, being more kind and gentle and empathetic. So I don't want to get too deep into that, but those are the things that come to my mind.
Yeah, this one, a huge question. We're complicated creatures. And when there's someone at a level of suicidality, it's, there can be the here and now aspect, but typically there's some trauma history behind that, suicidality. It's showing up in the here and now as suicidality, but a lot of times it stems from something possibly from childhood. So it gets complicated. And this is where someone needs someone that's, there's trauma informed, but at that level, they really need deep support for someone who understands the complexity of suicidality, the complexity of where someone is when they're in that state, because that state is a place of hopelessness and endlessness. And then this can go deeper into, it's tied to dissociation, and it gets very complex. So, but there is hope. I mean, that's one of, a lot of the folks I work with are in that place, and there is hope, but it's a lot of time. It's also a lot of hard work. And there can be these times where, one of these bigger experiences can kind of pop someone through, but then the need for like integration, support and more support. So that one's not an easy one to answer. There is a way through, but there really needs to be extreme caution with that person and finding the right person who can really be with them and understand what they're going through and listen to their story, not just the here and now, but what was their life like, what were they going through, and kind of tailoring a program. And again, a lot of times it's starting a little low and slow in the beginning. And also my heart goes out to that friend or whoever's suffering from this place. It's a lonely place to be. And yeah, reach out. I mean, that's something and we kind of need to wrap up, but as a kind of the outro to this, share, if anyone wants to reach out to myself or Sabba or Mike, if just the three of us, we don't think we have any way to post this on the website, but people can reach out to me at Steve, just Steve, Stevee, at Omterra, which is OMTERRA.org. And then Sabba, if you want to give your contact info.
Sure. So my email is Sabba, SABBA, at join, JOIN, Safar, SAFAR.com. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn, first name, last name. Feel free to DM me. Happy to chat and connect with anyone.
Yes. And then Mike, if you want to put your name out there.
Sure. It's out there. LinkedIn, social media. My name, Mike, and Mumola, MUMOLA, anywhere on social media or LinkedIn. And my website is mikemumola.com.
Awesome. Okay. And I'm also on LinkedIn too, Steve Elfrink. And then we're going to wrap this up. And then again, the QR code takes you to Webdelics, ton of information there. Also sign up for a newsletter, which will keep you posted on other AMAs coming up. But a huge thank you for everyone who was with us tonight to spend their Thursday evening with us. It's appreciated. We don't take any of this lightly that someone's listening to us talk. And a huge heartfelt thank you to Sabba for your time tonight, being with us. Greatly appreciate the work you're doing, who you are in this world. And we need more Sabbas out there and more Mikes. So thank you, everyone. Stay tuned for our next AMA. Again, we're going to have them once a month. Go to Webdelics, webdelics.com to find out the next one. And thank you, everyone, for being here. And stay safe out there, folks.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.